The question is how do we promote choice? How do we promote people's capacity to make an intelligent and healthy choice? That's the whole point of addiction treatment. And simply by blaming people for making, quote-unquote, the wrong choice, we're simply entrenching them further in addictive patterns because we're shaming them. And from a position of shame, nobody heals. What's really essential is to help people understand, just like in your case. You talked about how the addiction made you feel more alive. Well, you validate that. I want you to feel alive. It's a perfectly valid human goal. You just want to be a human being, fully engaged with life. The question is, what happened to you that dulled that sense of vitality for you? How did you lose your vivacity? And let's look at that. And how can you regain it without this particular behavior? That's how you help the addict, not by moral exhortations or coercion.
And that said, how often have you found that you've worked with someone and then one addiction sorts itself out, but their addictive nature manifests itself in something else?
Well, yes. So I wouldn't call it the addictive nature. It's not their nature. It's their second nature.
Okay.
So I would say their addictive personality. But the personality is not their nature. The personality actually is a structure they developed largely as a coping mechanism to deal with their childhood losses.
Yeah.
But it's true. Rather than thinking of addictions as being discrete entities, like here's cocaine addiction, there's heroin addiction, there's gambling addiction, there's nicotine addiction, there's sex addiction, there's pornography addiction, there's shopping addiction. There's one universal addiction process, as I point out in this book. And that universal addiction process employs the same brain circuits, the same brain chemicals, the same psychological dynamics of craving and denial. It doesn't matter what the addiction is. So whether it's drugs or behaviors, essentially the brain physiology of addiction employs the same systems so that if all you've dealt with is one target behavior, then that same addiction process will find another target. And that's why the treatment of addiction is not about giving up behaviors. It's about dealing with the dynamics that drive the behaviors in the first place. Otherwise, typically, people give up smoking, they put on weight. Because they haven't dealt with their addictive drive. You just dealt with one particular manifestation of the addictive drive. No, you might argue that overeating is less dangerous to your health than over-smoking, and that's probably true in most cases. But you've still got an addiction. As long as you're having to soothe your pain, you're going to find another target, another modality to self-soothe with.
Yeah, that's really interesting because people say, if I tell them that I've seen a therapist about this and it's been great, they say, so like what's changed? What have they done? I say, well, obviously the behaviour's changed.
Yeah.
Actually, trying to think, and what it is working through what happened in childhood.
Yes, and what has actually changed is how you see yourself, and what has changed is how you see the world. And what has changed is how you see your possibilities. And what has changed is that now you have a broader range of choices available to you than before. What trauma does is it constricts your capacity for choice making. And it constricts your possibilities. And it constricts, in fact, trauma is a constriction. And so it constricts your view of yourself and of the world that you live in. And so therapy where it works is an expansion. So that you actually go back to your real capacities and your real abilities and your real freedom. That would have been your birthright, but it was all restricted because of the trauma. So that's what changes. The behaviors then become an external manifestations of the internal change. But they're not the salient feature. The salient feature is the internal emotional equilibrium and space. That's what has to change.